Yeah.
And they're just quick like this. We're live. And the
Cool.
Elephant and Castle community are watching me and Simon Tompkins. Simon is in Greece, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm in Athens. Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
like just visiting, right? You don't live there permanently.
No, well, not at the moment, but you never know. I mean, it's quite nice here, so we'll see.
Yeah, beautiful. I've actually never been to Greece, so it's on my travel list. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I hadn't been either until 4 weeks ago. I can work remotely with coaching, and I just wanted to experiment with just Europe, and so I booked a one-way ticket to Crete, and I just thought I'd book a ticket and get there and see what happens. And so I had 3 amazing weeks working in Crete and checking out different towns, and now I'm in Athens, but I'm going to go back to Crete tonight, actually, on a ferry. So
nice.
If you like Greek food and you like history, then come to Greece. That's my message.
I like them both, and it is on my list. Simon, I'm grateful that you could join us today. You are a coach who helps people with work-life balance, and you have been a world traveler, a man with a lot of experience. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you today, just about where your whole journey to get you where you are today. But can you just introduce yourself? Just give people a couple-minute rundown of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Simon, as Nick said. My original background was in sales. After school, I wanted to go into engineering, but I quickly realised that probably wasn't for me. So I went into the world of bartending. I love people, I loved hospitality, and I just followed what felt right for me at that age. Then I fell into sales, and then I spent the next sort of 9 years working my way up through the sales in the drinks industry. So I got to work with top bars, hotels, restaurants, pub groups and stuff all across the country in London. Through my career working for spirits brands, beer brands, things like Peroni and Hendrick's Gin and stuff like that. And then I fell into leadership, and I managed sales teams and customer service teams, which is where everything crystallized for me, because I think throughout my entire life as an adult anyway, I was interested in people, psychology, bless you, and human behavior, and that applied in sales, and then it applied even more in leadership and leading and training sales teams. And then in 2018, I handed in my notice, I quit my job, sold my car and stuff like that, and went off around the world on a 14-month trip with my partner. So did quite a bit, sort of India, all of Asia, Australia, New Zealand, USA and Mexico. Came back, COVID hit, and during that time I'd really, the idea formed for me to become a coach and to use my background, my knowledge and my passion for people and leadership and coaching and development, to move into coaching. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years now, and I help people achieve work-life harmony. So it's really about work-life balance, but going a step beyond that. It's where your life synergizes with your work, and in terms of time and space, but also in terms of what you're really passionate about. So that the idea is that you still have separation between your work and between your personal life, but that you're so, what you do for your job and what brings you income is also something that you're so passionate about, that the two things, it doesn't really feel like, oh, I have to go to work today, and it's certainly not, it's not a situation where you're burned out and tired. It's just about creating a life where you're doing something that really aligns with who you are. And I think that's me. That brings us to where I am today, sat in Athens, practicing work-life harmony myself, basically. So.
Nice. There's a lot we can get into as you speak, but I want to kind of go back to your schooling. because I was reading on your site, and you just kind of briefly mentioned, you know, that you studied psychology and human behavior and body language. And I'm really interested to know, you know, like some people kind of have instinctual feelings when they meet somebody. I've never actually, like people have said, you know, like look at their eyes, look at their body language, look at this. I know nothing about that. I'm really interested if you could kind of unpack the kind of a beginner's 101 thing around human behaviors and body language, because I'm really interested in that.
Wow. Okay. Well, first thing to say, disclaimer, I'm not a body language expert, but I do use it a lot myself. It's not something I ever. No, actually, that's not true. I've taught it within the world of sales because it's incredibly useful. You know, 57% of our communication is our physical movement and our body language, and I think it's 35% of our communication is in tone of our voice, which leaves 8% of our communication is actually the words that come out of our mouth. And if you think about that, then you know, I could say something like, "Thank you, Nick." And I could say that depending on the tone of my voice and my facial expression, "Thank you, Nick," could be interpreted in a lot of ways. It could be warm and sincere, it could be sarcastic, it could be threatening, it could be, you know, I could be scared. There's a lot of different ways. Just, I'm still saying "Thank you, Nick," but it could really change. And I think that that's not something until when I first learned that statistic, you know, it sort of blew my mind because it's not something we think about. But actually, if you think about the difference between having a phone conversation with someone and having a video call like we are now, it makes a big difference because you're not going to interrupt me and I'm not going to interrupt you just because we can see that we're talking. But more than that, you know, there is facial expressions and eye contact and hand gestures and all those things that also help us communicate. Which is why I always say, if you're having a serious conversation with someone, you know, especially if it's a partner or something like that, try not to do it over messages, because you're down to 7% there, because that message that someone sends you can be interpreted in all sorts of different ways. You don't have the tone of voice and the facial expressions and the body language basically to back it up. I've not really answered your question now. Can you remind me the exact question? I will come back to it.
No, you're getting there. It's just like, you know what it was is that I love watching, you know, Sherlock Holmes movies and Guy Ritchie movies, you know, where they're like, they get to the actor and they're like, oh, his eye twitched here and sweat dropping from his brow here and his, you know, and they can kind of read and analyze the situation. And I'm just really interested in the instinctiveness of it, but then also the study of it. As you said, you know, it is something that you can study. I know you say you're not an expert at it, but it just really interests me that instinctually we can read a lot, but that there is some academia behind it. There is some study behind it, you know, so that people who are interested in it can kind of look into it a little bit further. But how much of it for you has been kind of instinctual, where now that you are in this job doing what you're doing, and a lot of it's over through a screen, you know, how can you instinctually kind of like read someone's energy or language, or you know, versus the face-to-face?
It's a really good question. I think that actually you can read a lot still through the screen. You know, a huge amount comes from the eyes, head movements, and facial expressions. So you can definitely do a lot through the screen. In terms of how much is instinctual and how much is learned, I think when you're learning body language, all you're actually doing is you're making yourself consciously aware of the stuff that you were doing unconsciously. You know, if you're in a meeting with one person or with multiple people, you know, depending on your natural levels of sort of social intelligence, which is quite important, you'll be able to pick up how different people are feeling. And, you know, maybe there's a comment raised and you might get the impression that someone over there is unhappy about it. They didn't maybe say that they're unhappy about it, but you might have seen their shoulders slump or their arms fold or lean back or their brow tighten, or, you know, they might have exhaled. All these little things. You wouldn't know that. You just know that person's not happy about that comment that was made. And when you're learning body language, actually, you're just learning, oh, well, you know, the examples I just gave, you're just learning what the actual things are, to be consciously aware of them. And I guess that being consciously aware of them means that you can fine tune your interpretation a bit, and also you can use body language yourself positively. So it's also, I mean, when two people are getting on, when there's rapport, a rapport is, one definition of rapport between two people is the reduction of perceived difference between them. So that's differences that you perceive between the two of you. The more rapport you have, the more trust, etc. When you have good rapport with someone, very often you are mimicking each other because you're reducing the difference between you. So you might be nodding your head at the same time. You might be standing in a similar fashion or sitting in a similar fashion. There's amazing examples. If you just go to a bar and you watch maybe two friends standing at a bar and chatting, you'll see so often they'll be stood in the exact, leaning and talking in the exact same position, or both have the opposite hand on their pint, and they'll both have one leg up on the stool or whatever. And you can see that those two people are getting on. And conversely, if people start to have an argument, then they'll be completely mismatched. But by knowing that, it means that if you want to build rapport with someone, if you want to put someone at ease, and if you want to build that trust, all you need to do is look at their body position and their mannerisms and start to match them. So it's, to use body language, you need the instincts, because you need to be able to pick up on what they're doing and what people are doing and how they're acting. But then through knowing the different tools, you can then start to sort of consciously read people a bit better, and you can consciously control your own, how you're coming across. So I mean, honestly, it's a subject I could probably go on about for hours, because it really fascinates me. But if anyone's interested, there's a book by a guy called Joe Navarro, who is an ex-FBI agent, and he's written a great book. I can't think of the name of his book, annoyingly, but Joe Navarro, Body Language. He's written several books, but absolutely fascinating how they use body language, even within the FBI, within that world, to their advantage. It's incredible. But he actually breaks it down in very simplistic terms that you and I can use every day in our meetings with people. So yeah, it's highly important. I guess it's been there for, it's an evolutionary thing. It comes, the awareness comes from the area of the brain called the hippocampus, which one of the things that does is it looks at your environment, and that's that part of you that if you're walking down a dark street at night, maybe in an unfamiliar city like Athens, is constantly assessing, is that group of people coming towards me a threat or not? And if you think about it, if you're walking down the street at night, wherever you are, maybe in Soho or something where you live, you don't really have to think about that, do you, to know, oh, am I a little bit threatened by those people, or are they completely harmless to me? And that's most of that is just the body language, the way people are walking, the way, the tone of their voice, even if you can't hear what they're saying. It's all these things which are going on, which our brains have been evolving and figuring out for tens of thousands of years, to work out what's dangerous and what isn't, and who can we trust and who do we like, and all these things. So
it's very, very interesting stuff. I will try to check out that book that you say, Joe Navarro. So I didn't have a pencil next to me, so you're gonna have to remind me about that at another time. Send me a text. But also I'm interested in actually, you mentioned about the 8% of actually what comes out of our mouths. And I was talking to my partner about it while I was away on holidays. Like you speak, and you hear what you think you speak, what you think you're speaking, and then you have to hear what you think you want to say, and then the person who you're speaking to, you think they're hearing what you're saying, and then you also have to try to think about what you think that they're hearing. It's really confusing. And I was like kind of going around in my head as we were walking and talking about this. Wow, why can't people just have conversations? But there's intricacies in it, and I like the fact that you talk about rapport, because you can have two people together talking about work harmony, like work harmony, and without having some kind of rapport, whatever you think you're saying and whatever's coming out of your mouth, and there isn't going to be the match. So how do you build the rapport with somebody? How important is that when you start working with someone, that you sit down and forget about like the tools and everything that you work with? And I know one of them is perspective, so we can get into that. So that means that, I suppose, to align rapport, you need to become more aligned with perspective, I suppose, kind of making sure the lens in which you're looking through this conversation are kind of the same focus. How do you build that with somebody? And how important is that in your first instance before you start doing the work?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it's very, very important, massively important, because rapport basically equals trust, liking and trust. And really it all comes down to trust, because you don't like someone unless you internally trust them. And of course, I mean, because you're going to dig into someone's life, and people share with me their deepest kind of darkest thoughts and experiences, you know, things that sometimes they would have never even voiced out loud to anyone else in the world. And that's what you know, real transformational coaching's about. So in order to do that, I have to feel comfortable with me. I'd say what's interesting is how quickly that can happen. It's not necessarily that we need to speak for a long time to do that. I think it is. I think the rapport comes from when I first speak to that person. Is I think the first thing is being authentic. You know, I am being me, and therefore that might mean. That might mean, and it's very rare to be honest with you, but it might mean that we don't click and we don't have a rapport, because I can't manufacture something. If someone gets on that phone and talks about values and ideas and goals and things that don't really align with what I believe in, I can't pretend to be someone else in order to help them, because, you know, then it's not real. And likewise, if the way I talk to them and explain the coaching process to them is not what they feel ready for or they don't want, then you know, there wouldn't be a fit there. Having said that, normally there is, and I think that's just because I come from a place of just wanting to help people. That's all I'm here to do. And when I start coaching, before I take on any clients for a coaching program, I give them a completely free of charge, real deep coaching session, so that they can experience what coaching with me is like, and I can understand them and their goals and how I can really help them. And then they can go away and think about if they want coaching, because I don't want to take someone on for something that's not really going to really change their life. And so it's a big decision. It's not one to rush. I think by being authentic, being genuine, letting people know that I'm there to serve them. I'm not there to judge. I'm never going to judge them for anything they tell me or any of their thoughts or feelings or past actions. I'm just there to help figure out a way forward. You know, we're all humans. None of us are perfect. None of us have all the answers. But I do believe that everyone is the expert on their own life, and everyone is the architect in their own life. And with the right tools and the right support, they can find the best way forward for them. And I think, you know, I think that's it. Like, it's just, I'm just being that person, you know, that there's no agenda. And I think that because that is authentic, people feel safe with me, just like they would with any coach who is out there in a genuine way to help and support people. You know, it's interesting because it's different from my background in sales, which is where I was always authentic and genuine as I could be then as well. But there was always about a product. You know, we're always there to talk about product someone was going to buy. This isn't really a product. Well, it's definitely not a product, but this is about helping someone make life-changing decisions and actions. But because of what it is, it's so deeply personal. It has to be authentic and it has to be completely open. So I think that's how I report.
I'm interested to know. I think the other aspect of rapport that I found is really helpful in creating these bonds is vulnerability. And it's really interesting, you know, that you had a very successful career in sales. and in a market that I know quite well, and I'm sure we have some similar friends. And I think that you and I could have a good plan of getting into that industry because we both worked in it, and we'll talk about that further. But what was it like? So I'm interested. I want to know your discomfort. I want to know how, like, what before you went away on your holiday, on your journey. I'm not going to call it a holiday. It's a journey for you. Before you went on this transformational journey, where was the discomfort? Was there some unease in you in the fact that maybe you weren't fulfilling your purpose that you've now found? So even though it's a sales driven, it's a fun industry, and hitting sales targets is very fulfilling, and it creates adrenaline rushes, and it's awesome and sometimes, but it's also very stressful. And if you're not aligned with that purpose, then you can feel uncomfortable. And I want to know, from you, where was there discomfort, or was it something that happened in the journey when you traveled?
No, I love that question. Thank you, Nick. It's a really interesting one. I guess the first sort of 5-6 years of my career was doing the sales, and as you say, I'm a competitive person by nature, so doing the sales, hitting the targets, all of those things I did find fulfilling, and it kept me going. When I then started to manage people, and particularly when I sort of built a team, then that became my meaning in my career. And I loved that job in particular, where I got to do that. The meaning for me didn't come from getting people to sell more stuff. It came from helping people grow as people, both sort of professionally and personally. And I got really great results with that team. And I've coached some of them, have become my clients, years later, because they've come back to me, and it was a really important part of my life, for sure, professionally and personally. So the meaning became helping people. I guess I was doing that for a while, and then I got another team, and I got to do it again. I'm really trying to unpick that, actually, because I was enjoying the meaning that I got from leading people. That was the meaning that I applied to my job, but the overall context, I guess, in which I was doing it within the world of this is working for a brewery, I definitely was conscious that I didn't really care about selling the product anymore. I cared all about the people. The job I was doing allowed me to do well by caring about the people. But I don't think there was anything in particular missing. At that time, I just woke up one morning and realized I'm turning 30 this year, and I always wanted to go traveling properly in my 20s, and I haven't, and I now need to make it happen. And so that was why I decided to go traveling. Once I went traveling in January 2019, I think it was, in the end, it took me about 3 months to fully decompress. Went through India, and I was in Vietnam, and I remember thinking, wow, my everything slowed down. I had time and space to really then let all my thoughts and all my experiences all my life so far marinate and form a new idea. And that is, from that point on, I think I knew I had to do something different, but I needed to create the space in order to have that realization, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think that answers the questions.
Yeah, it's just very interesting for me that, like, your purpose, it seems to be 2 words, and it's help others. And if you were to say, what's my purpose? And I'd say it's 2 words, help others. I think that's the secret of life. I think now I'm 51 years old. I know, like, everyone's like, oh, we're always here trying to find the secret of life, the secret of life. Secret of life for me is really simple. And as you've talked about human evolution, and how we've got to where we are today. We got to where we are today because we helped each other. We wouldn't have survived, saber-toothed tigers and ice ages if we didn't help one another, and if we didn't contribute to our tribe and to our community. So it's taken me a long time to figure it out, I thought that, as again, you mentioned on your site, the measure of me was going to be the car that I was driving, the girl that I was dating, the money I had in the bank, the watch I had on my wrist, you know, and how polished my shoes were, and what brand or make they were, or they came from, or which shop on Savile Row I got my suit from. I thought that those were what made me. I discovered at your, you know, probably a little bit younger than you, around 30, that none of that mattered. My journey was a little bit longer in the depths of darkness, and kind of that dark night of the soul journey for me was long and dark and painful. But once I came out of it, I went through a transformational program where, you know, right at the end of it, it's help others. It's kind of the Joseph Campbell hero's journey scenario, you know, where we are all designed to become the heroes in our own life by having a fellowship of people that we, you know, have certain challenges with, ultimately to get the gold and to share it with people. So if anyone is listening, well, people are listening to this, but, you know, we always are sitting there trying to find the meaning of life. And you say that, you know, you're, as is true, you know, we're all the experts in our own life, you know, but no one can tell us what to do. But what we can do is hold each other's hands and guide each other through the murky waters that happen in life. Like there are the beautiful times. We're here to share, we're here to help, we're here to contribute. We're not here to take. That's just my little rant at that. You know,
no, it's so true. You put it really well. Yeah. You
So,
put it really well there, Kai.
Yeah, it is really simple. And I also love the fact that there are, you know, people talk about, it's funny, I was listening to a podcast about coaches and mentors the other day, and the guy was talking about, and I've had to kind of really do some work trying to find this. I haven't been able to find it, but he talked about the word mentor. And I really like saying that, you know, that a mentor is what I like to do now. I like to mentor people because as he described it, a mentor was an old sailor. I really like that. An old salty sailor who'd been scarred, wind blown, knocked around the boat, probably fallen overboard and almost died a couple of times. You know, so that ultimately he can share his wealth of knowledge with other people so that they don't fall overboard and they don't get hit by the boom and they don't get rope burns the way he did, so that we can teach people through our experiences so that they don't have to necessarily navigate those waters that are so rapid. But also, like with your clients, how important is it for you to let them burn their fingers, or so that they can have their own experience of saying, I went down this path, it didn't work for me. Because I think that there's only so much we can guide people to the point where they have to have their own experience. Sometimes that experience isn't really that pleasant. So how do you prepare people for having those experiences that they need to take? You want to hold their hand through it, but you got to let them go as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess it is that I can't steer the outcome of a coaching session, because that's not what coaching is, in the sense that's not what personal coaching or life coaching is for. I might have in my head an idea of what I think someone needs to go and do, or what they need to change. Especially the more and more I coach people through the issue of, say, overworking and burnout, I start to see patterns. But everyone is different, and I have to take my hands off the steering wheel, basically, and just ask the questions. And that means when you're talking about letting them have experiences, sometimes it's even letting them have the experience within the coaching session that they need to have. So I might say, what outcome do you want from this? And then they might say, I want this kind of outcome. And in my head, I might think, I'm not sure you do. But it's not my job to say, no, that's not what you want. This is what, I have to remain completely curious and open and say, so what about that outcome excites you, for example? And then off we go down that path. And we might spend half an hour exploring a whole subject that someone actually would do a U-turn and come right back and they go, that's not the outcome I want, or it's certainly not the reasons why I thought I wanted that outcome. And then off we go, and we go down another path within the coaching session. And then by the end of it, they go, okay, now I have clarity, because for the last however many years or months or whatever of this situation in my mind and this next step in my life, I thought I wanted to do this and I thought I wanted to do it for that reason. But just by letting them go there and really thoroughly explore it, it can be that they think, oh no, that's not really right. That's not what I thought I wanted. And off we go somewhere else. So yeah, it's about being curious for the truth and for the answers. And sometimes, yeah, people leave a coaching session saying, right, Simon, this week I'm going to go and start doing X, Y, and Z. And that's my decision. And I'm great. If that's what you want to do, let's do that. And sometimes they're going to check in with me every day on WhatsApp to say that they've done X, Y, and Z, or they've had the conversation with their boss, they've had the conversation with their partner. And then we come back next week and we say, I did X, Y, and Z, but it didn't bring me the results I wanted, or it didn't make me feel like I wanted. And I say, okay, so how did you want to feel, and how did it make you feel, and what, and then we explore that. But that's where that comes in, letting people find their own way, because you just can't always know for sure. Different things work for different people, and you have to kind of sometimes make your own mistakes, and that's how you learn.
Yeah. I'm interested now to kind of go into maybe, have you ever had people say to you, Simon, my life would be so much better if only. Normally the if only is, I had a bigger house, I had a girlfriend or a partner, if only I was getting paid more money, if only I had a different job, if only I lived in another country, my life would be perfect. And that's something that I went through a lot. It still do to a large degree. My life would be great if. And what I've found is that it's really none of those exteriors matter. It's about a relationship with myself, and it's one, again, that I'm on. It's one I'm always going to be on. And I'm interested to know what you think about the idea around self-care and self-love.
Okay. Yeah, I think. I mean, it's a big one. This one. I think the first part of that was about if only, the if only part. I mean, that's I reckon if you master that, you're done. Like you're enlightened. I mean, you'll, if you fully master that, then you'll be ecstatically happy and fulfilled for every moment of your life, because it's a bit like the Buddhist philosophy, that if you're not craving to be in a different state, if you're not craving for anything else, then you're content and you're happy with what you have. So it's only the wanting of something more which can make you suffer, basically. Even if you're in pain, like physical pain, and you are wanting not to be in pain, then the pain makes you suffer. If you're not wanting for the pain to go away, then you're not suffering from it. So the if only thing is fascinating, because I think, there's the like I said, there's an enlightened state where you're never craving for anything to be any different to how it is. But then I think there's a recognition of, I think we've got to recognize the world that most of us live in. We're not living 10,000 years ago in small tribes in a very, very simple life, and we're not living as monks or in some other sort of different type of existence. Most of us are living in the world that you and I are in right now, which is, there's lots of external influences on us all the time, and from society and friends and family, and we have all these expectations and beliefs of things that we want. And so I think there's a balance there between striving for things that you want, goals, and being content and happy with where you're at on your journey to have those things. And I guess that's where self-care comes in. For me, self-care is more emotional, mental self-care. That's what's really important. I think, don't get me wrong, believe that we need to 100% look after ourselves physically in terms of our diet, sleep, and exercise, etc. But the self-care maybe that relates to this and not wanting for more is about working on our mindsets and working on our attitudes to life. And with every single client, it doesn't really matter if they come to me saying, I want to take a career break, or I want to get promoted, or I want to work less, or they say I want to feel more confident, or they want to do more exercise. It doesn't really matter. We always kind of come back to one thing, which is what do they value in life, and and therefore how does what they value in life relate to this goal that they've come to me with. And if there's a strong overlap between those two things, then it's likely that the goal is actually going to make them happy and fulfilled. But sometimes there isn't particularly strong overlap. Sometimes people value family and friends and experiences, and yet they tell me they want to earn another 50 grand a year to go and buy a load of stuff with. So that's self-care. I think coaching in itself is self-care. You're making an investment. Coaching, and by the way, that could also be therapy or loads of other types of that type of support for your mind. That is ultimately self-care to me, because it's working on the way you respond to life, and that whole thing of wanting more, or wanting things to be a different way. You can change that. You can't necessarily have all those things that you're craving today or tomorrow, but you can change the way you feel about those things, and you can change how you feel on a day-to-day basis. So for me, I think it's I think there's been a big awakening. I don't know if you'd agree with this, but in the last few years of personal development and of people recognizing the importance of therapy and of self-care in all the different ways. And I think that's great, but I still think we've got a long way to go before, as a society, people are really investing as much in themselves, mentally and physically, spiritually and emotionally, as they do in things, all the things that we kind of crave and we buy.
I think it's really hard using the word awakening or woke, because there's so many different connotations with the kind of the left and what's going on in politics and the world and around that idea of wokeness. But I think that there is a shift. The small little bit of studying that I've done on cycles of energy and flow and masculine and feminine energies, etc., and the sacred masculine, sacred feminine. I'm not a scholar in any of it. I'm just very, very interested in the fact that we as humanity, when I think about the bigger picture of there's nearly 8 billion of us here, and is it just by mistake that we are here and through evolution and everything? But I have my own experiences to say that I really feel connected to people. I feel like if I meditate in the morning and if I kind of just ask to be guided and molded and to reduce my ego and my wants, instead of needs, like I know I need food, I know I need water, but my wants of, I want a bigger place and I want more money, I can have those taken away from me. I feel more balanced. So I have experience in feeling connected and more balanced, knowing that I am just one with everybody else. And that gives me the very easy life of just knowing that I'm here to help others like you are. And I'm not here to obtain some kind of materialistic gains that makes me look better than my fellows. I'm like you. I'm like the measure of a man, or the positive impacts we make on people, not the money that we have in the bank. So I think that what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is that, like you say, we're I think we need help. I think we all need a guide, a mentor, a coach, a sponsor, somebody to help us navigate these worlds so that we can have our own experience. So ultimately we can help another person.
Sure.
And I do feel, yes, like you were guided the way you were guided because of what's going on, I think, with the planet. I think that Dr. Zach Bush talks about the world, with like being a giant bird and kind of flying around with this masculine energy of like structure and order and law and finance and capitalism, which has been so, it's been the construct of the society that we live in today. And everybody knows the system is broken. Everyone knows the system is set up by very elite, wealthy people to make them richer and make everybody else kind of subservient to the systems. I think it's very obvious, but we sit back and we kind of go, as long as I've got money in the bank to pay my rent, but I think that people are getting uncomfortable with that. I think they're being uncomfortable being part of a centralized system. And I think people are on the thing of like, this other wing is coming out of compassion, vulnerability, understanding, care for others, so that we can be one bird flying straight one day. And it's not going to happen in our lifetime, but what we can do is embrace it and say, we are in a beautiful time of transformation. We can look at the state of the world and all the fires burning and all the politics and all the this and all the that, but there is a shift, and I feel it, and I'm sure you feel it too. And I think that's something to really embrace and to feel positive for, rather than kind of retreat into the individualism and become more centralized and more scared and more divisive.
Yeah, it's true. I agree. What do you think? What do you think's created that shift in our response?
I think it's secular. I think that there's from what I've seen from the ancient Egyptians and the Mayan calendars, that these are cycles of golden ages and dark ages. There's a wonderful, very kind of low budget documentary series. You can find it on YouTube. It's called The Pyramid Codes. And it very, very wonderfully illustrates the fact that, through human evolution, we've had these golden ages, where they suspect things like the pyramids were built, and where there was a different system of energy and flow and order. And then the dark ages, which they say that was about 2012 was the pinnacle of the dark ages. And we're on the cusp and the rise of that. So we think that because we have all of this technology and the money and the cars, that we're the enlightened ones, when really probably about 12,000 years ago, they were more enlightened. 12,000 years before that, they were more enlightened. And we go through these cycles, so that ultimately there's always a rebirth and a growing from the knowing of all of the pain and the suffering that we go through. So that, and I think we need that. I think we need pain and suffering to be happy and joyous and free. And I think it cycles. So we are just in a cycle. We can't stop that. And I think that people, the more you work on yourself, and this idea of, I think it's really a hard word for me, self-love. I've really struggled with it for 6 years, this idea of self-love. I'm like, I don't need to love myself. That's very arrogant and all the huffy fluffy and woo-woo talk. But really, it's knowing that I am you and you are me. We are just reflections of each other, and we're all the one that have become the many, so we can become the one again. And again, and that will change and evolve, and as we're all going through these transformations. So treat people literally as you would want to be treated. Love you as you would love others. I don't know if it's that simple, because it's hard. I'm going to practice self-care today. It was something that I really struggled with growing up in the environment that guys like us grow up in, which is like, let's be tough and strong, and let's not show emotions, and let's not cry, and moisturizers for weak people, But try practice putting some hand lotion on one day, and you go, wow, I actually feel that's just a nice. Small practice of, it's a small practice of self-care, which builds into the fact that, you need to love yourself so that you can be able to love others properly.
100%. I think if you are not, that's the bottom line, in terms of, if there's a strong argument to say why self-care isn't selfish or any of those things, it's the fact that if you want to show up your best for the people that you love and care about, you need to be your best, and the only way to be your best is to look after yourself to some extent, right? Self-empathy is a really interesting kind of term, and you mentioned masculine and feminine earlier. I was reading recently about the concept of yin and yang within empathy, and how the kind of the masculine is very much like to deal with situations head on, and if there's something bad going on at work, it's like to have the conversations or to get your head down and knuckle down and work hard, and the feminine side of that is to is to seek comfort for friends, or to soothe yourself, to have a bath, to relax, but both of those are important. And it was interesting for me to reflect. My natural tendency in life is to go and solve the problem and get stuck into it. I've never been, unfortunate. I guess just through my upbringing, I never felt like I had to be strong too much. I was always encouraged to share my emotions and feelings and things. So that was okay for me. But I am definitely one of those people in life that's very I just want to sort something out. I just want to sort it out and work out. But there's which is good in a sense, but there's got to be a balance there. You've also got to just think, actually, I'm just a person here, and if I'm going through a tough time at work right now, it's not just about how can I deal with the work situation. It's what else can I do to just take care of myself, to get support, to relax. And so that concept of yin and yang when it comes to self-empathy is very, very interesting. And you said another thing to touch on is treat other people as you would like to be treated. A question that I use sometimes in coaching, which is a really powerful question when it's used at the right time, is literally, if your friend told you, if someone you care about, your friend told you what you've just told me, what would you say to them? Because in that situation, people are suddenly flipped. It flips their perspective. So they'd say, well, if a friend said that to me, I would give them a hug, and I'd tell them, it's not about you, it's about them. That we love you as you are. And we'd say, give yourself a break. We'd say, take it easy. Those are the things that people say, because to their friends or their family, they care about that person, and they recognize the beautiful value and everything within that person, how they just need to look after themselves. And that can really hit home with people. There's a lot of very success-driven people, and people that are just fighting their way through life and cracking on with it, that sometimes aren't giving themselves that level of empathy that they are giving to all the other people that they love and care about.
I think it's, I know we're running out of time here, but as you spoke, it really reminds me of when people are really looking for a hug, they're having a bad day and they're looking for a hug. We don't have the language to ask someone for a hug. And by a hug, you know what I mean? Like, it could be just a kind word or just someone to talk to or something. So people tend to exaggerate maybe how they feel, or look for sympathy, or look for when really that's what they want, but they're looking for it in a way where, as someone who's on the receiving end of that, we sense that they're looking for it, so we deny it. Oh, that person is looking for a hug because of the way they're speaking. They're embellishing a story. Their body language is a little bit meek. I'm going to reject them because they're looking for it. And I think this is something that I'm really trying to work with people, is this kind of duality between, how we're trying to converse with someone when we don't have the right language, and to be really open to the fact that, and I've had people in my life who've embellished stories because they were really just looking for some attention, and I've ignored them. Because I'm like, you're lying to me, so I'm going to ignore you until you tell me the truth. When really, and I really regret it because it's past that, I can no longer do this. They just wanted me to say, I love you. You're worthy. You're a good human being. You're amazing, and give them a hug. I could cry right now because it's bringing up this really emotion of the fact that I did deny these feelings, to giving my love to someone because I knew they wanted it, but they were coming at it to me in a way that I rejected it. So I'm sorry to kind of go off on that tangent, but that really brought that up.
No, it's really, it's valuable, powerful stuff. I completely agree with you. I would just reflect back at you that it's amazing that you have that awareness, and not everyone will ever realize this and realize what you're saying to me, and that through having being consciously aware of that now, clearly that the way you live now and the awareness that you have means that when you spot that in people, you will show them that love that they need. And that's an amazing thing. That, I think, only comes from really real working on yourself to get that level of awareness, you know, and it's brilliant. It's amazing.
Simon, I've taken more of your time than we said, but thank you. So
No
I can't thank you enough for joining me. And when you get back here, let's hook up, because I know we want to get that plan together to talk to a few people. I think we'll make a great presentation. So thanks for joining me. And how can people get in touch with you?
Been a pleasure. Thanks, Nick. By the way, was this being recorded anywhere?
It's live on Facebook. So it's live on. I'll send you the link.
Oh, amazing. Perfect. That'd be great.
You'll be able to watch it right away.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll share it with a couple of people. Thank you, Nick. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Yes. How can people get in touch with you quickly? Just your. You can give it to me too, and I'll put it in the Facebook feed. Yeah.
Yeah, through my website, simontompkinscoaching.com. If you Google Simon Tompkins Coaching, you'll find me. Number, email, whatever suits you. You know, there's always an introductory coaching session for anyone. For anyone who is intrigued by coaching, wants to get some clarity or work on something in your life, then it's that for sure.
Thanks, buddy. You're a great guy.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to seeing you when you get back. Take it easy. And thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week. Take it easy. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.